this is only the second video on my channel, I feel like we're still in the getting to know you phase. So I thought that I would film a little bit of my favorite books. So, for the purpose of this video, I'm defining favorite books as books that I have loved for at least 3 years. Some of them I have loved since junior high. Some of them I didn't discover until about 3 or 4 years ago. I feel like there are some books that I read last year that would eventually make this list, but every once in a while I read a book, I think I absolutely love it, and when I revisit it later, I don't like it as much the second time. And that makes me really sad. So, books have a 3-year waiting list before they qualify as favorites. I'm gonna do this in chronological order as I read them, so it may not be publishing order, although it'll probably be pretty close. A couple of these I'm not totally sure when they were published. Which means that the very first book I'm going to talk about tonight is The Hobbit. The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. And this, I mentioned it in my last video, has been one of my favorite books for many years. My dad read this book to me when I was in the 4th grade, so it is near and dear to my heart for sentimental reasons, but also because it's a good book. So I know that The Lord of the Rings is not everybody's cup of tea, but The Hobbit is really foundational to who I am as a reader and to my taste in books. I think that if my dad hadn't read this to me, if I didn't have such strong positive nostalgia associated with the book, it is highly likely that I would not be the avid fantasy reader that I am. Because my mom is not a big fantasy reader, and she was like the other big bookish influence in my life. She did also read a lot of books to me as a kid. But my mom was around when I was a kid, so none of them have that deep, significant emotional impact. Whereas my dad was in the Navy, so he wasn't always around. He didn't always have time. Which makes The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings trilogy really dear to me. So on the very off chance that you don't know what The Hobbit is, hobbits are little people, smaller than dwarves. They love peace and quiet and good-tilled earth. They dislike machines, but they are handy with tools. They are nimble, but don't like to hurry. They have sharp ears and eyes. They are inclined to be fat. They wear bright colors, but seldom wear shoes. They like to laugh and give and receive presents. They inhabit a land they call the Shire, a place between the river Brandywine and the far downs. The Hobbit is a story of these delightful creatures, a story complete in itself, yet full of portent. For this is the book that tells of Bilbo Baggins, the far-wandering hobbit, who discovered, some say stole, the One Ring of Power and brought it back to the Shire. And so this is the absolutely necessary beginning to the great story of the War of the Rings, which J.R.R. Tolkien completes in his epic fantasy trilogy, The Lord of the Rings. So The Hobbit is much more accessible than the rest of the Lord of the Rings trilogy. There's no, big politicking going on. It's just a really cute adventure story of a hobbit and a band of dwarves and a wizard. And they have to go and beat a dragon, and it's just... it would probably qualify as middle grade or young adult, although those were not categories used at the time when this came out, which was sometime in the 1940s, I believe. And this is a really old copy because I wanted one that looked like my dad's copy. So it was originally $1.95, and I think I paid more than that for it at Half Price Books when I bought it. But I love this book. So the next set of books that I want to talk about, it's a trilogy that is part of a larger series, but I'm going to treat it as a single book. And that is Magic's Pawn, Magic's Promise, and Magic's Price. And Magic's Pawn is definitely my favorite of the trilogy, but I love all of them because I love the main character, Vanielle. I discovered these books when I was in junior high. So I've had this copy since junior high. And you can kind of tell it's a little beat up. It survived quite a drenching and a rainstorm in my book bag when I missed the bus one day and had to walk home from school. It's been well loved, shall we say. Well loved. And part of what makes these books so special to me is that this was the very first book that I ever read that had queer characters in it, and it was published in the 90s. I believe the 90s. Although I read it around 2002-ish, I think. Probably somewhere around there. It was also the first book I ever read with a main character that had mental health struggles. Vanielle is a gay man with pretty severe depression, and these stories are very dark, very dark, very dark. This is not a trilogy that you want to read if you're looking for a happy ending, but at the time that I found them, I wasn't looking for books with happy endings. I was desperately craving books that I could relate to. And this was the first one that I found, and it was the only book that I read for a very, very long time that had queer main characters. Because it's, when I was that age, it's not like it is now where you can go to Barnes & Noble and they have 8 million copies of Heartstopper and a whole 4-foot section of LGBTQ plus books. I hope that the microphone is not picking up my dog licking me. I'm sorry if it is. She's kind of barely off frame. Mia? Mia, do you want to say hello? You want to say hello? Hello. Okay, go away. And this is Mia. Mia is my puppy. Even though she's 6 years old, she's still the puppy. So I just got thoroughly distracted, and I don't remember if I said Magic's Pawn, Magic's Promise, and Magic's Price are by Mercedes Lackey, and they're part of the Heralds of Valdemar series, which is a large, sprawling series, but it's written as a series of trilogies. So you can read the whole series, or you can just read the trilogies, which I think is a very cool way of like breaking it up and making it so that people can like kind of commit but don't really commit. So the next book that so we've gone from elementary school to junior high, and now we're in high school. 2 of these books were from high school. So The Historian by Elizabeth Kostova. This was a book that my high school world history teacher actually recommended to me because she knew that I was obsessed with Dracula. Like, truly, you know, you're into something when your high school teachers know that that's the thing to know about you. So I guess Dracula really should probably be on this list of favorite books, but I'm kind of using The Historian in its place. This book has some of the most beautiful descriptions of places, and it simultaneously makes you feel like you're in that location and also desperately wish that you could travel to that location. So The Historian is written from the perspective of the daughter of the historian, really, although she also grows up to be a historian in her own right. And it's the daughter trying to find her parents, and she's doing it by reading a series of letters that her father wrote to her years after the disappearance of her mother. So when she was a little girl, her mother disappeared, and her father thought that her mother was dead, and it isn't until years later that he comes to realize that she might not be, and so he goes to look for her, which means the daughter then goes to look for him. And the mother is chasing Dracula. So the book starts in Amsterdam. It goes to England. We go to Greece. We go to Transylvania, of course. Budapest, Hungary, Turkey. Yeah. Go, go, go. Don't slobber on my microphones, Mia. Go, go, go. Sit. Sit. Stay. Stay there. I may cut that out. I may leave it in. exist, so it's kind of going in the opposite direction. But I like that in stories, and I'm going to talk about that more with another book on this list, but we're not quite there yet, because I have one more book from high school, and that is In a Total Tonal Shift. Douglas Adams, The Ultimate Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I have wanted to get Don't Panic as a tattoo for years now. So I first read this book when I was a senior in high school. One of my classmates lent it to me, I think. And there we go. Don't panic. I just loved the story. It is shockingly upbeat for the end of the world. The aliens are fantastic. The story is interesting. Poor Arthur Dent is just having the absolute worst day. And when I was in college, I used to reread parts of it at the end of every fall semester. I am a rereader. That is part of how I know that a book has truly wormed its way into being a favorite, is that I will read it over and over and over again and derive a huge amount of comfort from already knowing what the story is, even if the story doesn't have an happy ending. So I didn't necessarily read like all 5.5 books every single time, but I did reread all of them more than once. And I haven't reread it in a while, but I think that it's probably about time to do that again. So, this is The Ultimate Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy because it has 5 novels and 1 short story in it, as opposed to just The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which is the title of the first one. So first we have The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and then The Restaurant at the End of the Universe. Life, the universe, and everything. So long, and thanks for all the fish. Young Zaphod plays it safe, and mostly harmless. Plus an introduction which includes, quote, some unhelpful remarks from the author. I like Douglas Adams. This book started as a radio play that got adapted into the books, that got adapted into, I believe, a TV show or a movie, and then eventually another movie, and that movie came out when I was in high school, and I think that's why we all started reading the book. I think I thought the movie was alright. I don't really remember. But I love the book. So, we have moved through high school, and now we are into my favorite book from college. American Gods by Neil Gaiman. When I was in, I think, my junior year, I took, maybe it was my senior year, I don't really remember. I took a class on fairy tales by one of the best professors that I had in my entire tenure at school. Dr. Zeal. He has since retired. He actually retired that year, and that was why I took the class, because I wanted to take it before he retired. So he taught this fairy tale class, and every single year someone would tell him that he should read American Gods because it was perfect for the class. And every year he absolutely refused, because the entire premise of his class was that these fairy tales, gods, mythology is not literally true. They are metaphors. So he couldn't stand the premise of this book, which is that they are all literally true. And so it's pretty similar to the Historian in that regard, that it's taking something that definitely is not actually literally true and working off the assumption that it is. So in this one, I'm just going to read you the back of the book, because I feel like it could sum it up better than I could. Locked behind bars for 3 years, Shadow did his time, quietly waiting for the magic day when he could return to Eagle Point, Indiana. A man no longer scared of what tomorrow might bring. All he wanted was to be with Laura, the wife he deeply loved, and start a new life. But just days before his release, Laura and Shadow's best friend are killed in an accident. With his life in pieces and nothing to keep him tethered, Shadow accepts a job from a beguiling stranger he meets on the way home. An enigmatic man who calls himself Mr. Wednesday. A trickster and a rogue, Wednesday seems to know more about Shadow than Shadow does himself. Life as Wednesday's bodyguard, driver, and errand boy is far more interesting and dangerous than Shadow ever imagined. It is a job that takes him on a dark and strange road trip and introduces him to a host of eccentric characters whose fates are mysteriously intertwined with his own. So this is, of course, by Neil Gaiman, who is one of my absolutely favorite authors. I adore his work. He does fantasy really well. He's also written a book of Norse mythology, which is he takes the Norse mythology and tells it as a single story instead of a series of bits and pieces as it usually gets told, and I really like that one too. But American Gods is definitely my favorite of his books. So, if you watched the TV show, I will say that season 1 was pretty accurate to the book, and then it went rapidly downhill from there. And I will never not be annoyed by the fact that they added all kinds of scenes that don't take place in the book into the TV show, and then got canceled before they wrapped up the story. And if they had just cut out all of the extraneous bits, stuck to the book, they could have finished the story before they got canceled. But I guess nobody makes a TV show assuming that they're gonna get canceled. Maybe they should have thought of that. So, that is American Gods. I like the twists and turns that the story takes. There were things that genuinely surprised me the first time that I read it. Mostly, though, I just like Shadow as a character. I like the twist at the end. I feel like there's kind of a couple of twists at the end, but I really just love this book. So Dr. Seal is missing out, and maybe now that he's retired, he'll have picked it up, but somehow I doubt it. He was pretty adamantly against it. So it's pretty funny when I think about it. I do have a BA in English Lit, and only one book from my time in college that makes my absolute all-time favorites list, and it was one that my favorite teacher adamantly would not read. It was not one assigned in class. However, The Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman I did read for a children's lit class. That was not my introduction to Neil Gaiman, though. I had already read American Gods by then. Yeah, I feel like I should have come out of that experience with more books that I loved, and yet here we are. I have 2 more books to tell you about. So, The Gone Away World by Nick Harkaway. This is my absolute all-time, complete and total, #1 favorite book. I love this book. My brother got it for me because it's also his favorite book. It's hard to even describe what this book is about. From the back of the book, The Gone Away World is its own singularity, monstrous, human, nakedly hallucinatory, and breathtakingly original. A hilarious, action-packed look at the apocalypse that combines a touching tale of friendship, a thrilling war story, and an all-out kung fu-infused mission to save the world. Gonzo Lubitsch. I've just realized I've never tried to say his name out loud before, and I don't know if that's how it's pronounced. Gonzo and his best friend have been inseparable since birth. They grew up together, they studied kung fu together, they rebelled in college together, and they fought in the Go-Away War together. Now, with the world in shambles and dark nightmarish clouds billowing over the wastelands, they have been tapped for an incredibly perilous mission. But quickly they see that this assignment is more complex than it seems, and before it is over, they will have encountered everything from mimes, ninjas, and pirates to one ultra-sinister mastermind whose only goal is world domination. So I'd say that is technically correct, and yet does not do this book justice. When I try and tell people that they should read it, mostly I just scream, Kung Fu! Mimes! Mimes! I would say that when I recommend The Gone Away World to other people, maybe 50% of them end up actually liking the book. The other 50% think it's too weird and takes too long to get to the point, which is a fair criticism. It does take a while to get where it's going. So, I would say that if you are a character-driven reader, you're probably going to like this, whereas if you are a plot-driven reader, you might struggle a little bit because we don't really get the plot moving until like halfway through the book, and it doesn't really makes sense until like maybe 75% of the way in. But this is the book that I wish that I could read again for the first time. Because when you finally, that moment of clarity where everything coalesces and you get it is so good. But knowing the story does not stop me from enjoying rereading it. I think I've read it 8 or 9 times, including just a couple of months ago. And in fact, last week I bought a copy and gave it to my Kung Fu teacher because I thought that he would enjoy it. I will say that the martial arts depicted in here is pretty darn accurate. So if you like Kung Fu movies and you like reading books, this might be a good fit for you because it is a Kung Fu movie in book form. It's really good. It's really, really good. And the very last book that I am going to tell you about tonight is The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. So, this is another one that character-driven readers will enjoy and plot-driven readers will not. Because this book is as much a love letter to books as it is a story. And it contains stories within stories within stories within stories within stories within stories. So it is a little hard to follow. It's not generally clear what's going on or why any of it's going on. I really like it though. So as you may have gathered by now, I am a character-driven reader. And I care more about the quality of the descriptions of the writing than I necessarily care about the actual plot, which some people would argue is part of the quality of the writing, and to them I say, pa. So our main character in this is a queer black man, and this book has received some criticism for it feeling like it's using diversity just to say that it's checked off those boxes. Some people do say that our main character does not really feel like a queer black man. And obviously I am not a queer black man, so I can't say one way or the other, but I will say that I really appreciated the fact that we could read a story that did not, where we have a queer character that isn't about his struggles with being queer. Yeah, I'm a little over the I want queer joy, basically is what I'm saying. I'm tired of reading coming out stories. I'm tired of reading the losing my religion stories, the oh, my whole family has abandoned me stories. I'm over it. I don't want those anymore. I want stories where someone can be queer and have it not affect the plot. Have it just be a thing in the book. And so I appreciated this book for that. Now, Erin Morgenstern is, as far as I'm aware, a straight white lady. So, that criticism is probably valid. information maybe before you start this book. But I love it. I love the language. I love the love that Erin Morgenstern clearly has. I think I should probably start wrapping this up. I don't think my dog is going to let me film for very much longer. So, the Starless Sea. This is another one that I want to get tattoos out of. A bee, a key, and a sword. Someday. So that is I didn't count how many books. 7. My top 7 favorite books. That is a bizarre number to have chosen. My top 7 favorite books of all time. And if you have read any of them, let me know in the comments. If you love any of them, especially let me know. If you've never read any of them, or if you have, I also want to know, are you a rereader? Do you take comfort in knowing what the story is already going to be? Or are you a been there, done that, moving on reader, and you lose interest once you have read the book and you already know what it's about? Or alternatively, tell me your favorite book. Your favorite book. Your favorite book. I hope that this was enjoyable for you, and I hope that you have a good night. Stay safe out